Waiting for Godot. Oh, what's the point? Or, oh, what is the point? The Tree. Samuel Beckett's play Waiting for Godot begins with a country road and a tree. This photo was taken by my wife, Lisa Smith O'Connor, in the west of Ireland, in a region called Connemara, which Beckett mentions in his play. But first, let's focus on the tree in the play. What is it? Estragon asks. I don't know. A willow. Godot 6. It must be dead, Vladimir speculates on the leafless tree. A weeping willow, says Estragon. So we have a weeping willow. This is not a weeping willow. This is the 18th century botanist who gave the tree its Latin name. His name is Carolus Linnaeus, and he named this tree, the weeping willow, Salix babylonica. The city of Babylonia is mentioned in Hebrew and Christian scriptures. In particular, this tower, which we all know as the Tower of Babel, which humans built as a sort of ladder to God, but God wrecked it. Linnaeus named a tree after Babylon because he thought a weeping willow was the tree mentioned in the first psalm, which says, Blessed is the man whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Regrettably, it is believed that Linnaeus had made a mistake. The tree in the psalm was not a willow, it was a poplar. But that is beside the point. So here we have a painting. I believe this is by Monet of a weeping willow. Um, so Beckett's reference to the first psalm via the weeping willow is both descriptive, as Estragon and Vladimir are meditating on their quote Lord, Godot, and it's also darkly ironic. Their tree does not bring forth fruit, nor does their meditation on their Lord. Instead, it inspires thoughts of suicide. Um, Weeping willows. Okay, so weeping willows, they're deciduous, meaning that they shed their leaves seasonally. They go dormant when it's colder, and then in the spring they regenerate. Um, Nutrients and sugary sap is pulled up from the earth and brought up to the leaves so the leaves can regrow. Um, so we have in the play, the Beckett's tree starts off bare. Where are the leaves on page 6? Estragon asks. Then it sprouts a few leaves. So by page 47, the tree has 4 or 5 leaves. That was stated in the narration. Then, interesting or strangely or disturbingly, the tree begins to bleed. Everything oozes, says Estragon. Look at the tree, says Vladimir. It's never the same pus from one moment to the next, says Estragon. So, okay, so the tree could be bleeding, or this could be the sap running as it's pulled up to those branches. It could be dying, it could be growing. Maybe it's doing both. I do think it's a little bit strange, some of the language that Beckett chooses to use here. The word oozes and pus. Pus is usually related to some sort of infection. So I'm kind of leaning towards the dying side, but we'll see a little later that that might not be the case. So here we have like leaves, like ashes, like leaves. So you have this sort of smashing together of growth and death in that poetic exchange. So next mention, and the tree is now full. This is on page 56. And Vladimir ponders, yesterday evening it was black and bare, and now it's covered with leaves. So there's some hope here, I think. Does this mean it's spring? Is this a sign of hope? It must be spring, says Estragon. So they're getting excited. Spring in a day, but not quite, because by age 83, doubt has sprung. Everything's dead but the tree, observes Vladimir. And then finally, by the end of the play, Estragon and Vladimir have forgotten all about the tree. So they start again. What is it? This is pretty much verbatim what happened at the beginning of the play, but now we're at the very end of the play. What is it? Estragon asks again. It's a tree, says Vladimir. Yes, but what kind? I don't know, repeats Vladimir. A willow. So it all begins again. And so the cycle, and I think this is part of Beckett's thematic focus, continues of shedding, of growing, of regrowing, of knowing, of forgetting, of re-knowing endlessly. Why don't we hang ourselves? Estragon wonders, looking up at the tree. It seems like they're suffering from this sort of cycle. All right, let's have a look at another object right at the beginning of the play, and that is the mound. So in front of the tree is a quote, low mound. Although Beckett does not directly state what made this mound, it seems clear that Beckett used the word on purpose. A mound being, quote, an artificial bank or hill of earth or stones, especially one constructed over a burial or ceremonial site. That's from Merriam-Webster dictionary. So we have a mound. So he's using the word mound, and a mound is human made. So there we have what's called a burial mound. That's the word that is often used for cairns in Ireland. So if you go to Ireland, you can go visit these burial mounds. They're pretty awesome. They're all over the island. Um, so let's see here. So I think Beckett's use of the word mound leaves open the idea that this mound that they're sitting on is actually a cairn, um, which I said in Ireland are these burial mounds. So we have Vladimir. He takes. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm moving too fast here. Let's go back here. Um, so let's see. Sorry. And also, I thought it was kind of interesting that these low mounds they have sort of the shape, as you see here and as you saw before, of one of these bowler hats. And again, it's hard to tell if Beckett was playing with that, but you have Vladimir and Estragon constantly taking off their hats, which look like these mounds, and looking inside them as if they're looking for something, as if they're trying to resurrect something. So here you have Vladimir. He takes off his hat. He peers inside. He feels about inside of it. He's searching, and this is repeated throughout the play. Um, and likewise, as he sits on the burial mound at the beginning of the play, Estragon peers into emptiness, but that's the emptiness of his boot. So he picks up his boot. He peers inside of it. He feels around, turns it upside down, shakes it, and then he looks at the ground. He looks at the mound. Um, at this point, Vladimir even refers to Estragon as a little heap of bones, as he's sitting on this, what I believe is a burial mound. And I think he's pointing to what exists below the ground, this sacred earth they rest on, but they have no knowledge of. So here we have, so I was lucky enough to actually go into this burial mound. It's called Newgrange. And it's older than the Egyptian pyramids. In the late 17th century, a landowner in County Meath told his Irish workers to dig up what he thought was just a hill of earth. When they stumbled on the Neolithic art etched into an entrance stone, the Irish farmers took off. They fled. I think they knew that this was a sacred place because it's part of their oral mythology. Um, let's have a look at some of this. So this is the entrance stone as you're going into uh, the passage at Newgrange, you'll meet this entrance stone. It's beautiful. Being less rooted in Irish myth, the landowner just dug in with the help of a local Welsh antiquarian. Um, so they begin excavating this mound. This is the mound. This is much later. This is probably in the 1960s, but you can see what it looks like. It was just part of the local landscape. Um, so I entered this space about 320 years after that landowner stumbled upon it, and about 5,000 years after it was built. I walked down a narrow passageway, a stone passageway into an inner chamber, which I remember being shocked to find out this inner chamber was still watertight because of the way the stones were designed. The water does not leak inside. I found that to be really cool. The inner chamber, you'll see inside the inner chamber, you'll find designs sort of etched into the walls. Once a year during the winter solstice, sunlight enters the passageway, moves along the stone walls, and alights this inner sanctum. Inside, you'll find Neolithic art carved into these niches. One of the niches you can see here. There are what are called triskells. So you picture that. This is the light coming in once a year. This is a triskel. It's sort of these swirls that are joined together in three. Nobody knows for sure what any of this means because the people who made it were actually populated Ireland before the Celts, and there's really no history attached to them anymore. So it's sort of a lost story there. Um, there's also these serpent-like swirls, these sort of like these galaxy derivative dots, and other geometrical sort of wonders in there. Um, so this universe, in part, this universe, this low mound on which Vladimir and Estragon sit, it's right below them, and they have no idea. Estragon sleeps on it. Estragon sleeps on it. He sits down on the mound, disposes himself for sleep, his arms and knees, and his head on his arms, and he goes night night right on this other world. So I think what I get from this, I think it's saying that history in a sense is gone in this place. Neither Vladimir or Estragon know the sacredness under their feet. So it repeats this theme of knowing, of forgetting. Now the re-knowing part is kind of interesting because what does it matter if they learned it again? So what does it matter if they did know? The history is gone. The people are forgotten and their language suffocated, just like Irish. Their language was taken. So as Lucky says, these mounds, Lucky in his monologue, I think he's talking about the mounds. He says these mounds are just an abode of stone. They've lost their meaning. And he also refers to empty skulls in Connemara, which also has the sort of visual illusion of these mounds being empty now. And Connemara was a region, it's in the west of Ireland, very rocky. It's interesting. It kind of looks like some of the landscape in this play. Incredibly rocky, very stony, very windy, sort of like almost like a moonscape in places. And it's filled with these sacred sort of burial sites. Um, okay. So I think Beckett is asking a few questions. So what meaning can be excavated from a hollowed out history? Can emptiness be resurrected? And I think it's that there's irony in that, but I almost see like the characters sort of trying to sort of grab onto emptiness. And if so, there's that question, well, what's the point? What are we doing here? I don't have the answers to those questions, but I think they're questions that Beckett asks of us. Okay, let's talk about Lucky. I love Lucky. He's a strange dude. So Beckett repeats tragic ironies throughout the play. Often he delivers them like punchlines. Take Lucky the slave. Um, there he is. This is not Lucky. This is Jean-Paul Sartre. Um, so let's see. So maybe Sartre can help us understand Lucky a little bit because it's more than just his name. The irony here. Um, so Sartre, in his Being and Nothingness, which was published in 1940, Let's see. And this was I guess I think Waiting for Godot was 54. So we're looking about 14 years before Beckett published Waiting for Godot. So I would assume he was aware of being in nothingness. He was interested in philosophy. So I think Lucky actually looks a little bit like Jean-Paul Sartre. Sorry, Jean-Paul, I don't mean to make fun of you. But Vladimir describes Lucky as having these goggling out eyes, his eyes goggling out of his head. And a lot of pictures of Jean-Paul Sartre, it kind of looks like that. His eyes are very sort of intense, and they're sort of, in most of the pictures I see, they're really emphasized, and they do look kind of goggly. Um, so Sartre argued that we modern people, quote, do not know what we want, and yet we are responsible for what we have, what we are, I'm sorry. And this responsibility frees and condemns us, he argues. So the quote that I think is most fitting to understanding Lucky is, man is condemned to be free because once thrown into the world, he is responsible for everything he does. Um, so Lucky, so Lucky is not condemned because he is a slave. There's the sort of irony there. So as they wait for their savior, Estragon and Vladimir doubt everything they do. Lucky does not suffer from doubt because Lucky has his savior or master, Pozo, a landowner, which creates a whole other series of connotations for the Irish, which I'm not going to go down that road. It'd be interesting to hear what other people thought about that. So Lucky's every choice is made for him. His every movement is controlled. So in that sense, Lucky is free. So Lucky's existential freedom satirizes and empathizes with Vladimir and Estragon's desperate search for captivity, which will free them from doubt. So let's have a look at Lucky's monologue. And I think, in the previous, this idea that Lucky was free because he was a slave, of course, I think this is a joke. Um, I think Beckett was kidding with us while at the same time being quite serious about the idea of freedom and the sort of anxiety that can come with freedom, as Sartre also points out. So, Lucky's monologue. So, a hat is placed on Lucky's head, that hollowed out space, and he speaks. And suddenly the hat almost like generates all these images that come sort of pouring out from Lucky. So Lucky. So we have the hats placed on his head. Um, and he sort of, Lucky kind of recycles language from the past. He turns the past into something new. He's like that sort of modernist writer that we've been learning about. And the reader has to wrestle with the shape shifting of Lucky. So here we have Proteus, who we see in the Odyssey, and you have to wrestle with Proteus as he sort of shape shifts to get to hold him still and get some sort of meaning from him. And I think Lucky is Protean in that sense. He's constantly moving from voices and images, and we have to sort of wrestle with that. So for example, so the one thing he does is he recycles a lot of Pozo's language in particular. So I'll have a closer sort of reading of this. So Pozo says on page 14, "I present myself," and then Lucky in his monologue he mimics that syntactically. Lucky says, "I resume," and he says that more than once. And resume is an important one too, because the prefix re means again. So we're reminding us of Lucky's reflective nature. When Pozo mentions fresh air on page 17, Lucky mentions the air on page 35. Pozo tosses the bones of a chicken on page 19, which Lucky linguistically gnaws in his monologue. The skull, the skull, the skull, the skull. Pozo's phrase, the tears of the world, page 24, gets smashed between the flames, the tears, the stones in Lucky's description. Um, and I think the tears, they're kind of like they're sort of the lyrical, um, um, the it's the infusion of something lyrical into the world, something human into the sort of the rocky surface of things, the concrete reality. And then we have those tears, that lyricalness being smashed between the concrete, the flames, and the stones. Um, Lucky speaks of these common things that belong to humans. Pozo speaks of common things on page 25, and Lucky sort of lays them out for us, the things that humans um, make of the concrete world: tennis and football and running and cycling and swimming and skating and riding and tennis of all kinds. Um, Pozo also refers to 60 years ago, and I think this gets kind of regurgitated by Lucky into the year of their Lord 600. Pozo makes a silly pun. I've lost my cap and Peterson, and Lucky joins in the fun of Fartov and Belcher. Um, Pozo points to the firmament, the heavens, and Lucky, speaking in the voice of a fiery sermon, sets it ablaze. Flames will fire the firmament, that is to say, blast hell to heaven. And then we have Qua Sky. Pozo says this on page 9, and then of course we all heard Lucky qua 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 qua, page 33. So we can think more about that word qua in Aristotle's. It comes from Aristotle's phrase, the study of being qua being, um, which Aristotle describes as the way in which we study a subject. Um, I think Lucky is commenting on the way in which we study God, because he says the white beard of God, qua 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 qua. Um, but interesting, and I don't know. I also saw it as a sort of a playful brushing off of God too, but I think this might be somewhat anachronistic because to me it just sounds like peanuts. Wah 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 wah. Every time I was hearing that, and of course, there's probably absolutely no relation, but who knows? Maybe Lucky was also a prophet. Um, okay, so Bozo exclaims, quote, the bitch of the earth. And Lucky then gives us all of its parts. We have the stones and the flames and the mountains and the seas and the rivers, running water, running fire, which I took to be like lava, autumn, summer, winter, um, Pozo's pale and luminous sky, is Lucky's heaven so blue, still, and calm. All right, one second. Let me just catch up here in my script. Um, and I assume that other parts of Lucky's speech are also fragments that he picked up along the way from Pozo and others. Lucky seems to be trapped, and syntactically, he's trapped in a series of subordinate clauses as well as prepositional phrases that, although incomplete, in a sense, just like a subordinate clause, Lucky depends on something independent. He depends on Pozo to complete himself. So syntactically, he's also incomplete. But although incomplete, it's okay because he becomes a sort of repository of past voices and artifacts. Some cultural and some common. Um, and what does this mound of stuff, like T.S. Eliot's heap of broken images, give us, humans? Not much, according to Lucky. Just a never ending cycle of waste, of pines, wastes, and pines concurrently. Um, so you have this repetition of what we heard earlier, when mention of the tree was made. This idea of growth and death and growth and death, and also the forgetfulness of the characters, um, knowing and forgetting and re-knowing. It's this endless sort of concurrent um, situation that they seem stuck in, and it doesn't seem like a good thing. So we have Lucky talking about of labors left unfinished, of labors thought lost, and all for reasons unknown. But time will tell. So there's the hope, waiting for Godot. Time will tell, he says. And so we wait. And then the hat is removed, and Lucky falls, and there is silence. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the maker of all this, Samuel Barclay Beckett. So here's biography. Born County Dublin, 13 April 1906. Educated Trinity College, BA 27. Published 1929, Paris. Horoscope. 1931, A Critical Study of Proust. 1933, his first novel, More Pricks Than Kicks. Thereafter, publishes poetry, short stories, essays, plays, and longer prose. In 1933, after his father's death, begins investigation of self. To oppose the same, with 2 years of Jungian psychotherapy with Dr. Wilfred Bion. Beckett was stabbed in the chest and nearly killed in 1938, 14 years before he published Waiting for Godot. In court, when Beckett asked his assailant why he tried to kill him, the man said, "I do not know, sir." While Ezra Pound touted fascism during the Second World War, Beckett joined the French resistance to fight German occupation. Okay, I took this information from Vimeo.com and I rearranged it as such. So that's my story on this play and Beckett. I wanted to do a little bit of a full disclosure here at the end. So here is the a common picture that you see of Beckett. I had this picture in my bedroom growing up when I was young, a little boy, and it was next to a picture of a Marine. My dad wanted me to be a Marine. I was kind of torn between the two posters. Under the picture, there were the lines, "I can't go on, I'll go on," by Beckett. My oldest sister, Jennifer, always thought the picture had this sort of old timey feel. So one day she decided, without my knowledge, to take it to a more old timey level by singeing the edges with a lighter. And she thought if she made it look kind of burnt, it would look better. The picture caught on fire and it burned to ash. So Beckett died in 1989 and he's buried in Paris. Near his grave stands a tree. I think Beckett would have enjoyed this story, um, and maybe someday I will leave it by his grave. There it is. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in class.